Move on to visitor statements. If we have visitors, so this is the
Gotta read the
paragraph.
message, correct.
Okay. The Board of Education welcomes and encourages the participation of its citizens in the business of the school district. There are 2 points in the meeting where visitor statements are scheduled. Citizens are welcome to raise questions or make comments at either one. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and cannot be combined. Please note the Board of Education will not answer questions or engage in dialogue during visitor comments. If a person would like additional time to address the board, such a request should be submitted in writing 48 hours before the meeting to the superintendent.
Good evening. I'm smiling. I'm going to assume you are too. You can't tell. My name is Lindsay Morrison. I'm here as a resident and also as one of the leaders of Indivisible West Suburban Action League, a locally led grassroots organization here in our communities that works on issues of equity and progress here for each other and our neighbors. I'd like to read an open letter to RBHS students Tirza Elliott and Raven McClellan. Dear Tirza and Raven, thank you for attending the Board of Education meeting at RBHS on April 13th, 2021, and using your voices and experiences as young Black women to ask for change at the high school. Listening to you describe the life of the school and exchanges in hallways and classrooms demands an immediate response from our community, Board of Education, RBHS administration, staff, and faculty. You implore us to first increase anti-racist teaching, second, commit to decentering whiteness, and third, to train staff and students to recognize implicit bias. Among the incidents you describe is one that conveys the need most clearly. After walking out of school because your lunch was thrown at you with no intervention from a nearby staff member, you commented that a white student would have been stopped from leaving the building. This example should not be lost in a debate about memory or version because it directly reveals the need for healing first steps. For building strong, stable schools is long over, oops, sorry about that. Expecting restorative practices and acknowledging intent versus impact. We also hear the urgency in your pleas and recognize the courage it takes to attend a Board of Education meeting. You should not have to implore us to provide a just and inclusive curriculum and school climate through visitor comments at a board meeting. On your behalf and that of all students at RBHS, we commit to holding our Board of Education and administrative accountable to prioritize racial equity and develop an action plan that expects results and reports on them regularly. Thank you, Indivisible West Suburban Action League. And we will also give a copy for all of you and to include in the record.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison.
For everyone, so I don't know the best process that would do. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Kendra Kurikana, and I am a resident, homeowner, and parent living in Riverside. I'm here with Indivisible to read to you an open letter to the District 208 School Board of Education, Superintendent, and School Administration. Dear school leaders, on April 13th, 2021, 2 Riverside Brookfield students, Tirza Elliott and Raven McKelvin, courageously brought their experience of racial trauma and bias at RBHS to the District 208 School Board. As community members, as taxpayers, and particularly as parents, we were struck by Tirza and Raven's bravery as they spoke their truth to power
literally, to a room of white adult decision makers. We were simultaneously infuriated that the behavior they had experienced was tolerated, and sadly unsurprised by reports of racism occurring in our schools. What was most disappointing, however, is what it took for us to listen. If school leaders had been doing their jobs advocating for the youth and families in our communities, students would not need to put themselves into a position of extreme vulnerability to be heard and for us to listen. In the past year, we've experienced one of the greatest racial justice movements in our nation's history, and a global pandemic that has put a spotlight on long-standing economic and racial disparities. It is time for our community to step out of the comfort of silence and demand accountability and strategic action in our schools. With that in mind, we ask the District 208 School Board, Superintendent, RBHS leadership for a strong commitment to racial equity, starting with action in the following areas. 1, publish a public response to Terza, Raven, and the requests made of the board. This response should speak to students at RBHS who have also experienced racism at school. 2, establish a zero-tolerance policy against racist speech or actions by students, staff, administration, leadership, and parents that includes swift and certain consequences for those who don't follow it. 3, share with all communities an action plan for the district's approach to address bias, racism, and racial disparity in our schools, with a focus on long-term systemic change. 4, provide restorative resources for support and healing to students who have experienced racialized trauma while at RBHS.
30 seconds left.
Our communities have seen a surge of growth, with new families renting and purchasing homes in Riverside and Brookfield at historic rates. Our communities are increasingly more diverse, and our schools reflect that fact. 48% of students identify as non-white. That's nearly half of the student body. Our district neighbors have launched racial equity initiatives with the vision of building spaces for learning where students of color can thrive. In Riverside, North Riverside, and Brookfield, not enough is being done. The messy work of racial equity is, I'm losing my time.
Last page, last page. You're okay.
Racial equity and building strong, stable schools is long overdue and cannot wait another school year or another budget cycle. The work ahead needs to be community and student-centered, and most of all, it needs to be valued and prioritized by our school board and tax-funded school leaders. We're emerging from this year a changed nation, a changed people, and a changed community. This is a time of possibility for our towns. The time for action is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment?